Lecture. Hopefully, we've saved the best for last. This will be, I think, provocative, if nothing else, and we've already teased this quite a bit. All right, so I don't know if any of you have heard the story of Rosemary Johnson. Right? Anybody you know who Rosemary Johnson is? Anybody heard about Rosemary Johnson? Okay. Well, she was a promising musician in the 1980s in Wales. She was part of the Welsh National Opera Orchestra. She was the first seat as a violinist. And on her way to a performance, was involved in an automobile accident that resulted in her being in a coma for about 7 or 8 months. And when she came out of the coma, she basically was a quadriplegic. She was unable to move, unable to speak. So she was locked in, unable to communicate. And she has lived that way since that time. So for nearly 3.5 decades, she's been, maybe over 4 decades, she's been locked in. But that is actually changing now thanks to some work being done by a neuroscientist by the name of Eduardo Miranda, who is at the University of Plymouth in the UK. And he's working on a project called the Brain-Computer Musical Interface project. The idea is that they take modified EEG caps and that they are able to detect the electrical activity in the brain of the patients. And then they train the patients to learn to control the electrical activity in their brain so that they can then select notes or select musical phrases, which allows the patients to compose music or to actually even direct the play of musicians who would see the same computer screen as the patient wearing the brain-computer interface. And so that the person directing the movement of the cursor on the software screen can direct the play of the musicians. And this is really revolutionizing the capacity of these people that are locked in to be able to communicate. And Eduardo Miranda chose music as the mode for expression because music not only allows these patients to convey ideas, but also to convey emotion, which is very, very important to be able to express emotion, particularly in that particular type of locked-in state. And as a way to show off the technology, Eduardo Miranda has traveled around with something called the Paramusical Ensemble that consists of a collaboration between 4 patients like Rosemary Johnson and the Bergeson String Quartet. And as you can imagine, this kind of technology really can revolutionize the treatment of people that suffer from severe brain injuries or from stroke. And what I'd like to do is show you a video of the technology in action. This is a clip that I taken from YouTube, produced by Volvo. And I don't know if we could turn the lights off. It might allow you to be able to see this. I've just got the sound coming from my computer, so you guys need to be really quiet, okay? So you can hear it coming from the computer. Oops, coming from the computer. Let's see here if I can get this. It's pretty powerful, isn't it? And and the point here is just again to appreciate the good that can come from technologies like that. And what we're looking at are brain-computer interface technologies. And in fact, people working in this area of bioengineering are making enormous advances. And this has become one of the most competitive areas in bioengineering, driving, again, advances forward. And there's a number of different types of brain-computer interfaces that are being explored. One type is called non-invasive, which is like the type that Rosemary Johnson was wearing, which is, again, an external cap where electrodes touch the scalp. Now, the advantage of this is that it doesn't require surgery to use. The disadvantage is that the signal from the brain's electrical activity has to go through the skull and the scalp, which reduces the intensity of the signal. It also is not able to give you good resolution. You're measuring average electrical activity of brain regions as opposed to getting precision information from the brain. One way around this is what are called the use of semi-invasive brain-computer interface technologies, where the interface is actually laid on top of the brain. And so this requires surgery to open up the skull to place the electrode, and it improves the signal to noise, but it doesn't really improve the resolution. The best kind of state-of-the-art technology would be called invasive, where the interface is actually planted in specific regions of the brain, which allows not only a very high signal, but also allows for picking up the electrical activity of thousands of neurons as opposed to millions of neurons. So you get better resolution. The problem with this, of course, is that it's invasive, and by inserting the interface into the brain, you can cause bleeding and scar tissue formation. It actually is viewed by the body as being a foreign object, and so the interface is coated with what are called glial cells that eventually over time degrade the information coming from the interface. One approach that's being taken to improve the brain-computer interfaces is that by Elon Musk's company Neuralink, where they have developed a state-of-the-art brain-computer interface. And here what they've done is they use essentially gold electrodes that are coated with a polymer called a polyimide polymer that makes it much more biocompatible. And these are, again, micro electrodes, very, very thin electrodes that are then implanted in the brain with high precision using a surgical robot that implants the electrodes in the brain. And then they actually can collect the information coming from these electrodes, coalescing it into a USB cable that then can be used to send a wireless transmission to the external device. And this minimizes the discomfort of the brain-computer interface because you don't have wires and cables and things sticking out of your brain. And so many people believe that this is really a significant advance in brain-computer interface technology. But this technology goes beyond just simply the type of application you saw for Rosemary Johnson. People are utilizing these brain-computer interfaces to teach amputees to control robotic prosthetic limbs. These are being used with patients that are quadriplegic and paraplegic to gain mobility through the use of the control of exoskeletons. And there's even work that's been done where people can use this same kind of technology to actually allow patients to convert thoughts into text. This is one of the latest advances where the patient imagines writing a letter, and then the brain-computer interface coupled with machine learning hardware can learn what that particular movement of that patient involves and correlate that to a particular letter. And so with this technology, patients can essentially convert thought to text at the same rate and same accuracy as you would use if you're texting somebody on a smartphone. In fact, Elon Musk is arguing that this technology can go beyond just simply biomedical applications and very well may become the next user interface, allowing us to control electronic devices. So he's looking at not only developing these brain-computer interfaces for biomedical purposes, but for commercial use, for commercial application. This is really kind of foreshadowing, or maybe not foreshadowing, but portending, foreshadowing what is people or think is going to come in terms of a revolution in terms of our relationship with electronic devices. This is a video taken from a TED Talk by a guy named Jason Sosa, who is the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Executive Officer for a company called BioImmersive, where the goal is to try to create these kind of electronic interfaces that, again, are going to, people think, revolutionize the way we interact with electronic devices. So let's watch this short clip.
Computer chips won't just be in your laptop or your phone. Doctors will implant them in our brains, and they'll restore sight to the blind and hearing to the deaf. Today, there are already 300,000 people with cochlear implants. It's a form of neural prosthetic that allows certain types of deaf people to hear. And Michio Kaku describes brain implants as your very own augmented mind. This is the beginning of the brain net, a possible successor to the internet, a form of virtual telepathy that will allow you to create music, drive a car, communicate with other people, and even surf the web at the speed of thought. Movies will no longer be these two-dimensional slate tablets that you look into and blast sound at you. They'll be fully immersive experiences, complete with feeling and emotion the way the director originally intended. Everything is stored, every memory recorded, and available on a cloud service. And mind uploading will allow your friends to share their digital vacation experiences that never actually took place. All just happen in their mind. Similar to Total Recall.
Oops. So pretty crazy stuff, isn't it? And it's tempting to think about this as being something that is way off in the future, that these are ideas that are more in line with science fiction, but these are ideas that are rapidly becoming reality. These are capabilities that are rapidly emerging. And when you couple that with advances, for example, in gene editing, where we now can go in and with high precision manipulate the genomes of organisms, including human beings, this is, again, going to revolutionize medicine, where you can use that type of technology to treat people with genetic disorders. And there's about 5,000 to 10,000 genetic disorders that have been identified. Many of them involve mutations to just a single region of the genome. And the thought is that, can we go in there and replace that defective region with a healthy version of that region and mitigate the symptoms, maybe even cure people with genetic disorders? And some of these genetic disorders are rare, and there's no really good therapy for them at all. And so this could, again, revolutionize medicine, but the same technology could be used to create designer humans or to genetically modify humans to, again, enhance their capabilities beyond their natural biological limits. There have been advances, as we've already mentioned, in the biology of aging, where we now have thoughts that we could extend human life expectancy for several hundreds of years. And all of this type of advance is giving legitimacy to this idea called transhumanism, which we just talked about. And this idea of transhumanism has been around for a long time. Probably the first expression of transhumanism was published in the early 1900s by J.B.S. Haldane in his book The Atlas, where he envisioned advances in genetics taking place so that we could create designer human beings. And the ideas in that book were the inspiration for Huxley's book, A Brave New World. But the idea of transhumanism, of using technology to modify our biological makeup, is an idea that has always been a fringe idea that most people haven't taken seriously. Suddenly, with these kind of advances happening simultaneously, this idea has moved from the fringes into the mainstream of the academy and is now beginning to filter into our culture at large. And so, again, this idea of transhumanism is this idea that we have an obligation to use this technology to enhance our capabilities beyond our biological limitations, to take control of our own evolution as human beings. This is what James Hughes has said in his book Citizen Cyborg. He's an advocate of the transhumanist vision, a sociologist. In the 21st century, the convergence of artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, and genetic engineering will allow human beings to achieve things previously imagined only in science fiction. Lifespans will extend well beyond a century. Our senses and cognition will be enhanced. We will gain control over our emotions and memory. We will merge with machines, and machines will become more like humans. These technologies will allow us to evolve into varieties of post-humans and usher us into a transhuman era in society. Transhuman technologies, technologies that push the boundaries of humanism, can radically improve the quality of our life, and we have a fundamental right to use them to control our bodies and our minds. So this is the vision that this group of people have for the future, and increasingly this vision is gaining acceptance. It's gaining popularity. And people may not identify themselves as transhumanists, but they will ascribe, in a sense, to ideas connected to transhumanism. In effect, what is happening is that there is a new type of faith, a new type of religious system that is emerging that we might call techno-faith. And the idea here is that as we live in a world that's increasingly secular, that it's going to be science and technology that will save us. That science and technology is going to be the means by which we solve the most pressing problems we face as humanity, and that the ultimate problem we face as human beings is our own immortality and the ultimate demise of our species as human beings. And so the idea is that it's science and technology that's going to save us, that's going to grant us practical immortality, a type of eternal life, that's going to grant us the opportunity to usher in a utopian type of future. For many people that hold to this transhumanist view are, in effect, atheists, materialists. And for those people, this has become a type of eschatology. In atheism, there is no ultimate hope, purpose, or destiny, right? That once you die, you die. That once human beings become extinct, we become extinct. There is no ultimate hope, purpose, or destiny to each of us as individuals or to human beings as a species. But with transhumanism, you suddenly have a type of future, if you will, that you can hope for, that you can look forward to. It is a hope, a type of salvation. And in this respect, transhumanism has become, again, a type of religious system. There's a religious nature to transhumanism. And in many respects, it is becoming a chief competitor to the gospel. And when it comes to this idea, again, of techno-faith, one of the most powerful expressions of this idea comes from Ray Kurzweil in his book, The Singularity is Near, where he argues that eventually we will get to the point where we can literally upload our minds into a machine framework and exist eternally, or for practical purposes, eternally in a machine framework where we will be freed from the shackles of our biology and will be able to essentially live for a practical, again, to have practical immortality, and even be able to populate the entirety of the universe, where we're no longer going to be, again, trapped or confined by the limitations of our biology.
Wait, are you saying that you can live forever by being in a computer?
Having a digital immortality, yeah. That's the vision.
You can't produce people in that state for sure.
You wouldn't have to, because the only reason to reproduce is because as a biological creature, your lifetime is finite.
I don't think you could put your life into a computer and still live.
Well, this is the vision. Now, I mean, I as a Christian don't see the mind and the brain as the same thing, right? I see that my view of human beings is that we have an immaterial aspect to our nature, right? So I would be highly skeptical, given my view of human nature, that this is going to be possible. But the advances that you're seeing with brain-computer interface technology give a lot of people hope that this kind of vision for the future is possible, is achievable. And it's not so much what is possible that's important, it's what people think is possible. So if people think this is possible, then their hope is going to be in in the transhumanist vision. That's where their faith is going to reside. And so one of our tasks as Christians, as this idea emerges and it gains credibility, gains popularity, is, can technology save us? Because in a sense, this is a competitor to the gospel. Yeah, I would argue it's a false gospel, but it is a competitor to the gospel. It's a competitor to the gospel. And so what I'm going to do to demonstrate why this transhumanist vision is never going to save us, why techno-faith can never save us, is to make 3 points. And then we'll ask the question, where can salvation come from? I think I mentioned this yesterday, but there is a whole area now of ethics devoted to dealing with the issues that arise from the use of brain-computer interface technology. And people have done studies showing that you can actually arrest the symptoms of Parkinson's disease with brain-computer interface technology. The problem is that it alters the personality of the patient, that the patient becomes less risk-averse. They're more willing to take on risk. And because of that, the question then becomes, is that patient actually agreeing to subsequent treatments with the brain-computer interface? Or would they have otherwise agreed to it if they didn't have the brain-computer interface? There's a loss of free will, because you now are forming a collaboration between the human patient and the brain-computer interface. So who's controlling who? Who's actually making that decision? And so the fact that there are these significant ethical issues that arise from the use of brain-computer interfaces for medical purposes, not ethical issues that arise from using them for enhancement purposes, and there's a whole host of ethical issues we could spend time talking about, but we don't have that time. The point is that if there are these kind of ethical issues for the best use of the technology, is this really a technology that can ultimately save us? The other point that I want to make has to do with something called the myth of progress. And the idea here behind this is that this notion that technological advance is somehow going to improve our condition as human beings is something that is not necessarily the right way to think about technology. As human beings, we have this uneasy relationship with technology. It frees us and it enslaves us. It alleviates suffering and it causes suffering, right? And let me give you a quick example. When before I joined Reasons to Believe almost 24 years ago, I worked at a Fortune 500 company in research and development. And at that time, the internet was just becoming available. And I literally had to get vice presidential approval before I could go online. You had to justify why you wanted to go online, if you can believe that. And now we're in a time where we don't think twice about going online. That our entire economy is built around having access to the internet. If there was some kind of solar flare that took out satellites or damaged the electrical grid, our economies would just come to a grinding halt because we're so dependent upon the internet. So it created economic growth. It created ways to free us from having to go to the store to get what we needed, where we could just, with a couple of clicks, get what we want and it's delivered to our door. But it also enslaves us. We're trapped. And many times technology will cause suffering, new types of suffering technology will alleviate suffering, but in turn, it leads to new types of problems that we never had to deal with before that arise from the technology itself. So Brent Waters, a theologian, said this: "The science which promised to liberate humans from the shackles of superstition and fossilized tradition was instead serving as a cruel taskmaster." David Below Curtis, a philosopher: "We create technologies to liberate us from the problems of physical labor, but these technologies inevitably create unique problems of living in a technological society rife with pollution, psychological stress, and bureaucratic coldness." So the idea here is that, again, technology is a double-edged sword. There's also unintended consequences. That many times technology leads to problems that we could never anticipate. And the more powerful the technology, the more concerning those problems actually are. David Below Curtis also said this: "Each technology both gives and takes away. Despite our good intentions, all technologies manifest harmful side effects, and in spite of our bad intentions, even the most destructive inventions may be re-engineered for good. By adding to our lives, technologies by necessity also subtract from them." And then, of course, there's this whole idea of sin, that many transhumanists are highly naive. They don't recognize the fact that as human beings we are sinful. And this is something that the Christian worldview can contribute in a significant way as we deliberate about these kinds of technologies. Ronald Cole Turner, a theologian, said this: "Transhumanists seem a little naive about the human predicament and therefore overly optimistic about what it takes to engineer solutions. What theologians call sin, humanity's unexplained but inescapable tendency to pervert and destroy even its best achievements, is missing from transhumanist thought, and also absent in any realistic attitude about how well and at the same time how badly things will go as we make progress toward improving our lives and our species." So, Ronald Cole Turner continues: "Our technological power is great and is growing quickly, but it is never pure, never categorized by singularity of purpose in pursuit of the good. If this self-sabotaging inner disorder is a limitation of our biology, it is one we seem unwilling or unable to transcend, all the more so because too rarely do we admit it's real." Okay, so again, the point is that there are these unintended consequences that are connected with technology that, again, raise questions about, is technology really going to improve our future? Is there a myth of progress that we're buying into that may fool us into thinking that technology can save us when in fact it can't? To me, what I think to be the most problematic idea of all has to do with something called the salvation paradox. Because ultimately, the if we modify ourselves as human beings to save ourselves, to grant ourselves immortality, what we are saving isn't ourselves, it's what we have created. If I upload my brain or my mind into machine hardware, and that mind now has digital immortality, it's not me that's been saved. It's a copy of my mind that's been saved. This is called the salvation paradox. Suppose technology has changed me, said Patrick Hopkins, so much that I am no longer a member of the human species, no longer limited by any species-defining human cognitive characteristics. I have changed so much that the existence I now experience is incomprehensible to my former limited human self. As much as that language may sound wonderful, exciting, and liberating at first, thinking about it more in depth reveals that such a technological process offers far less to me than hoped. The end result will be some kind of successor entity to me, but it will not be me. And so the point here is that when you spend a little bit of time thinking through the idea of relying on technology and science to save us, it becomes very evident very quickly that it can't. Technology is a wonderful thing. It can improve our lives, but again, it's something that we have to manage so that we get the best out of it and minimize that which is the worst of technology. And that, indeed, is a struggle. But that, of course, then leads to the question, where can we find salvation? And it's very easy, I think, for us as Christians to begin to demonize transhumanists, right? To see them as the enemy, to see them as people with dangerous ideas that are subverting and perverting our culture and competing with the gospel itself. But in fact, I think transhumanism is doing an incredible favor for the Christian faith. Why is that? Because what transhumanism is doing is laying bare the need that every individual has for salvation, for hope, purpose, and destiny, to connect to the transcendent. It's laying bare this idea that the world isn't the way that it's supposed to be, that human beings suffer, and that suffering seems to be wrong, that human beings are going to die, that our species is going to go extinct, and that seems to be wrong. And so what they're trying to do is find a way to resolve that problem through the use of science and technology. But this is where the gospel becomes powerful, because what transhumanists are seeking, in fact, what everyone is seeking, one way or the other, is salvation. And it is the gospel that promises what people who are transhumanists are looking for. And in fact, Ronald Cole Turner notes that there are these interesting parallels between transhumanism and the gospel. There are notable similarities between Christianity and transhumanism. Christians hope for eternal life that will be enjoyed with the fullest possible knowledge, joy, and moral purity. Transhumanists look forward to extending the human lifespan perhaps indefinitely, while also enriching human knowledge, attaining greater happiness, if not joy, in achieving moral balance and social harmony. One explanation for these similarities is that transhumanism emerged from a culture shaped by Christianity. Another is that the yearnings of Christians and transhumanists, if not quite universally shared by all human beings, are broadly held and find their own expression in both contexts. Technology can lead us to the erroneous notion that the only problems to which it is worth paying attention involve engineering. When we let this happen, we reduce human yearning for salvation to a mere desire for enhancement, a lesser salvation that we can control rather than the true salvation for which we must also wait. So the point is that, again, that connection, that similarity represents bridges that we can use to find common ground with people that express techno-faith, and in doing so, make the gospel fresh and relevant, I think, in exciting ways in the next couple of decades. I see the emergence of transhumanism as something that we should be looking to take advantage of as Christians, because it brings the gospel conversation into the marketplace with such force and with such power. One final thought, and then we'll bring everything to a close, and that's this, is that ultimately Christianity is the truest expression of transhumanism. Now, why would I say that? Because as the Apostle Paul writes, this is our ultimate hope as Christians. There are heavenly bodies and there are earthly bodies, but the splendor of the heavenly bodies is one kind, and the splendor of earthly bodies is another. The sun has one kind of splendor, the moon another, and the stars another, and stars differ from star in splendor. So will it be with the resurrection of the dead. The body that is sown is perishable, it is raised imperishable. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. And this is the hope that we have in Christ. Okay, questions, comments, thoughts? All right. Okay, well, then you guys can, I guess, take a short break before the next class. I just want to say thank you very much for having me here, and I enjoyed our time together. Hopefully you enjoyed it too. Hopefully it was meaningful and helpful to you. Hopefully I've left you with more questions than answers, because that would be success as far as I'm concerned, because it's through raising those questions that hopefully you will then be motivated to search out the answers and to wrestle with things that maybe you never thought you needed to wrestle with before. So, yeah.
In light of what you taught us, how would you pray about it? I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. How would I pray about it? Well, what my prayer for you guys would be is this. And our mission at Reasons to Believe is to open people to the gospel by revealing God in science. And so my prayer would be that, first of all, that you see God revealed through scientific discoveries, which are really characterizing the world around us, which is part of God's revelation to us. That you as individuals would experience God through nature, that science isn't something that you are afraid of or that you don't think is worth your time, but that science becomes something you develop an interest in, whether you're a scientist or not, because it's those advances that open up ideas about who God is and reveal God in a fresh way to us, provided that you understand those discoveries properly. So part of what we've been doing here is that. So that's part of my prayers. But the other is that you really think about how you might use science as a way to open people to the gospel, right? And you guys are going to be faced with some really challenging questions as part of the body of Christ as we go into the future with emerging technologies, and that you need to be equipped to engage those. But by doing that, you open up an opportunity for people to see the value of the Christian faith and to see the value of the gospel. So that would be my prayer, that you see God revealed in nature through science, and that you become adept at using science to build a bridge to the gospel for others. Great question. Anybody else? Okay, well, I guess you guys start at 11, so I will, that's right, 11 is the next class? Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yep.